I'm here with multi-award winning editor and director Emer Reynolds. Emer, we're here to talk about your new documentary, The Farthest, but others will know you as an editor from Patrick's Day, The Eclipse, 1 Million Dubliners, which you won an IFTA for, and she's also won an IFTA for her other documentary, Here Was Cuba, My Brothers, Shameless and Timbuktu. So we were here to talk about The Farthest, which is your latest documentary, which I was lucky enough to see last Sunday in the IFI, and it completely blew my mind as a total meditation on an exploration on space, interstellar travel. And can you just tell us a little bit about The Farthest for those who haven't seen it?
Well, thank you I'm delighted it blew your mind. That's a great recommendation. Yeah, The Farthest is a big epic cinema adventure story centered around the Voyager spacecraft and its tiny little iconic cargo, the Golden Record. And both of them have been flying through our solar system since 1977, exploring all the planets. And recently they became the first human-made object to leave our solar system, in fact, and enter interstellar space, a place where we've never been before. So, it's more than a film about space. It's actually a film about curiosity and dreams and hope. It's all about, the very nature of being human. Really, it's for anyone who's ever looked up at the night sky and wondered.
Absolutely. And I did when I went home that night, I really did start questioning that kind of thing. It was because I was thinking about everything that was spoken about, our place, like you're saying, our place in the universe. And, it's such a vast story. What attracted you to it in the very beginning?
Great love of science and space since I was a child, bit of a sci-fi fanatic, and, dreamed about being an astronaut my whole life. And always very curious about the Voyager spacecraft. Throughout my childhood, it was traveling, where no human had ever been before. He was sending back pictures from Uranus and then sending back pictures from Neptune, 3 billion miles away. I couldn't believe it, so always thought it would make a fantastic story. Always thought fantastic film. It's such a great story. It's so romantic. It's so hopeful. It's so poetic and dazzling that we could achieve this as humans. So after John Murray and I co-directed Here Was Cuba together, we were discussing making a film about Voyager, discovered a kind of an equal fascination in each other with space and with Voyager. And, we talked about how we might tell it today. It amazingly has never been seen on a cinema screen before. There's been a few TV documentaries, but it had never been given the full cinema treatment, which we were so excited to realise. And around the time we talked about making it, Voyager 1, as I said, left the solar system and became the first human-made object out in interstellar space. Massive historic moment in world and humankind's history. So it was back in the news, and it was the perfect moment maybe to let this story out. And we got a lot of interest in the story very quickly. And very quickly for a documentary, we raised the funds in under 2 years, and began filming in 2015.
And how long did it take you to do it? You're saying 2 years?
So 2 years to raise the funds, and then 2 years to make the film.
Wow, so 4 in total, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
which is short for a documentary.
Is it? So what's the average lifespan?
5 to 7.
5 to 7, yeah. So one of the things that really struck me about the documentary, one of the loveliest things, was that it's so human. You put the human element really back into science. So there is obviously a lot of science fact and information, and you go into how the satellites were built and all this kind of thing. But it's so nice to hear them, the scientists behind it, talk about their journey of these 40 odd years being a part of this adventure. And they're quite parental. They talk about it as though it's this child of theirs. Can you talk a bit about that?
I mean, it's a gorgeous, surprising part of the documentary. How emotional it is, and how human and how funny it is. These characters who have probably been asked about Voyager 200 times over the last 40 years, they were so eager to tell you the human story, to tell you, like, science can be intimidating. Yeah. And what they've achieved is so mind-blowingly powerful and intense. It's very, very technical, but they actually, I didn't want to communicate to just a kind of like myself, kind of a space geeky audience. I wanted to talk to a general audience who could really get on board with the human story. So, and found in the scientists and in the engineers, when we approached them, a great desire to tell that story too. To basically throw off the kind of the scientific coat and tell you what it felt like to be a person there, what it felt like to dream it up, to imagine this thing, to hope, to have the curiosity and the imagination to think it might work, and then to make it go. And they really were happy to talk to me at that level of being there as a person. And they're really inspirational, and they really do some of them, of course, think of it as like a robot. It's just it's just a machine out there. But actually, much more of them have this massive human connection to it. That they built it, they had their hands on it, they programmed it, they planned what it would do, and they're watching it, knocking it out of the park. For years and years and years now, achieving something that they could have only dreamed of. So they have this massive love for it and deep emotional attachment to it, and. We were very privileged that they were prepared to share that with the film audience.
Yeah, I have to say, there's one thing that I got very emotional at the end. I really felt that connection, and I think it is really nice to see that part of science, because I think a lot of people maybe wouldn't see that side of it. And one thing that he mentioned in the Q&A in the IFI after the screening was that some of the scientists were actually very devout Christians, and I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear that.
Yeah, that was a very interesting part of the journey for us. I mean, obviously every interview was very long. I think each interview was over 3 hours long, so we had lots of time for wandering in and out, as the film does, into the big cosmic questions, the primal questions. Maybe that space evokes in us, these concepts about, are we alone? Why are we here? How did it all begin? How will it end? How insignificant we are in this huge cosmic night. So we were definitely wandering around all those big philosophical questions about existence, and as a result then we wandered into, on occasion with some of the scientists, into the conversations to do with religious belief. And one of the scientists is quite a devout Christian, and that was very interesting talking with her. She keeps saying she sees no conflict between her Christian views and her science. She kept saying God loves science, which was very interesting to engage with. And one of the other scientists, quantum physicist, he basically told me he had gone all the way from quite a religious Christian upbringing in Philadelphia and Christian schools, had kind of wandered all the way away into atheism via quantum physics and his understanding of the universe that way. And then the deeper he got into those concepts and how mental it is at the quantum level, how mental physics is at the quantum level, he had basically come back all the way around to believing that there would be a creator. So it's fascinating. And I must put the interviews online at some point. They're also interesting in their extended form.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would like that, and especially there's so many really quite effusive personalities, especially Lawrence Krauss, who was a cosmologist in the film, and he was there at the IFI, and he's an awful lot to say about the universe and survival on the planet. And it's interesting. One scientist in the documentary says that she thinks that a lot of people associate space exploration with the survival of the human race, and yet Lawrence Krauss was saying that really we should be looking after our own planet. So I'm just wondering how you feel about that.
Look, I think it's an absolutely gorgeous dichotomy. The film definitely is saying, look, we're not going anywhere soon. Space is too big. We're so isolated. The distances are too far. There is no habitable planet in this solar system. We're not going anywhere soon. So it's incumbent upon us to take care of this precious jewel that we're on. Via, of course, the great story, because Voyager 1 is the spacecraft that took the famous pale blue dot picture, which is featured in the film, where Carl Sagan points out this miniature little speck of dust, basically, in a giant blackness of space, and says that's where you live. Everyone you've ever known, everyone you ever loved is on that planet. So the film definitely, is well into that love affair with Earth, and that how incumbent upon us it is to take care of it and to protect it. But of course, there's also there's an anger to do with that, to do with we're ruining it, and you might have a moment in history now where there's a kind of a suspicion of science, and there's a cavalier attitude to what we're doing to the planet. So the film is definitely, and all the scientists are definitely in that camp. However, in cosmic terms, like in cosmic time terms, this planet cannot sustain us indefinitely, no matter how well we look after it. In 4 or 5 billion years, this planet will not be habitable, because the sun will go into a red giant phase. That's happening. We can't stop that. This planet won't be habitable. So ultimately, I think Carolyn Porker, who says that we'll have to find a way to live off this world if we want to survive long term, billions of years now, admittedly, we do have to leave. So both of those realities are also true, but even if we can figure out a way to get off this planet and have colonies on other distant planets. It's not happening. It's not happening in the next, hundreds of years. Like that's for us to. We need to save this planet that we've got right now, because it's the only home we have.
That's very true, and I think that's. I don't think anyone would argue with you. I certainly wouldn't anyway. I'm just going to go back to the I suppose the filmmaking process. And you worked with Kate McCullough. Yeah. What was she like to work? She's such a talented and wonderful DP. Did she have any hand in, a lot of the CGI animations where you see the satellite traveling through interstellar space, or was it really just the kind of the interview footage itself?
So in Galway, Gar O'Brien introduced her on stage as Kate McCullough, the awesome. So let's go with that. She's an amazing artist and a great friend and a great collaborator. And she also filmed Here Was Cuba with me. So we have a really good relationship. And she wasn't involved in the CGI particularly. That all happened post shoot. Sure. But what we filmed, and it's more hidden in the film than you might see. We not only did she film all the interviews, she filmed, there's a huge amount of visual material, all the macro detail of all the droplets and all the golden record grooves and all this weird space stuff we riffed on. So and also all the beautiful shots. I mean, she shot everything in the film apart from the archive and the CGI. But the beautiful shots tracking, looking up at the sky, and Kate designed all those. So Kate and myself and Joe Fallover, our production designer, did an awful lot of work together before we ever shot, much like you would on any feature film, designing the feel and the look. We were talking about how we wanted it to feel in the cinema, epic and beautiful and detailed and poetic and modern. She was very keen on modern, that it wouldn't feel like an old story. So and colours, we were all about blues and chromes and oranges, and really just designed quite a look that would unify all the elements. There was always going to be interview and archive and CGI and then the whole visual palette, both the stuff we shot in America and the interviews and all the stuff we shot in the studio. That was all, very, very coherently and collaboratively worked out between Kate and I.
Yeah, and I think definitely the feel of the film, it's not only, it's very accessible as a story, that way you've told it, but also, you're right, it doesn't feel like an old story. It feels like, I think it's quite nostalgic in places because we're talking about the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, but I think the feel of it is very modern. So great job on that.
And some of that, of course, is, the interviews,
yeah, for sure.
The interviewees are prepared to be kind of lively and human and present, but also the music, I think, plays a big part in the modern feel too. Now it also does the other, because a lot of the big tracks in the film are 70s tracks. But the actual score, written by Ray Harman, also awesome. Yeah, he wrote a really current, lively, guitar-y kind of, electric guitar and acoustic and bells and all this beautiful score, really iconic score. So I think that also helps this. It feels very fresh through those ears too.
Definitely, yeah. And I think the opening where we have that song, is it Wishing on a Star?
Yeah,
and then the kind of satellite traveling, doing its thing through interstellar space. I suppose, so you spent a lot of time in the States then doing this, and there's so much archive footage. I mean, did you have any hand in the IFI archive? Was it mostly archives in the States?
Yeah, it was all, we had an archive researcher, Aoife Carey, and I don't know if there was any archive come out of the IFI, but I believe it was mostly from the States, huge amount from NASA and JPL, and then radio and TV type stuff that came out of the States around Voyager. And then obviously our fantastic editor, Tony Cranston, had over 1,000 hours of archive to pore over and pick through, and then so much original material that Kate and I brought in, including over 120 hours of interviews. So, we had a big mountain to climb when we had finished the shoot to try to find the great essential story in there. And Tony is an amazing editor, a great storyteller, but also an amazing comedy editor. He's won a number of BAFTAs and stuff for brilliant comedies. So
because it is funny.
So funny, he was looking through the archive. My brief was to try to find the characters that are in the film in the archive and try to find fresh and interesting stuff. But he was like a hound dog looking for the funny moments, looking for the real human bits, and as a result, the film, especially through the archive, tells a really funny story of people on this journey together and getting more comfortable with the press as they go along, and and this gorgeous idea of this team that were really close and explored the universe, explored the solar system together.
Yeah. I thought they all had a really good sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I think some of the jokes were kind of spacey. It took me a while to kind of know where they were coming from. But
nerdy.
Yeah, they totally were. But they had a great sense of humor.
Yeah. And I really, I'm going to credit them for being so funny in general, but Tony, for being, having the, finding those gems and really featuring them.
And it's like, where do you, those hundreds of footage, it's quite daunting to have to pick through all that stuff. I mean, where do you begin with all of those hours and hours of footage, and is there anything that you would have loved to keep in that maybe didn't make the final cut?
Yeah, it's daunting. It certainly is daunting, and I'd say we could have made 10 films. There was so much story and detail that we weren't able to feature. And how do you do it? You really just have to start and try to pick your way through and not lose confidence, just keep going. And, we always said that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. You'll just start and it'll start to appear. It'll start to emerge. And it did. And of course, there were some blind alleys and red herrings and, things that we tried that didn't work, and other things that we really wanted to, we didn't believe in, but they were actually necessary. And of course, it's a gorgeous... you're constantly building and refining and building and refining. And I said there was 10 films in there, but I think we were just looking for the essence of it, but not to be cutthroat in the essence, that we were allowed have little kind of hilarious anecdotes and, stuff that was off the point, but was essential to the point of the character of the film, the point of the character of the story, of the characters, to allow them their personalities, because that's actually what makes the film so human,
Yeah, and you
see real people.
You do, and you kind of, I think by the end of it, you do have your favourites. You do. You like listening to one person over another.
Who was your favourite?
I liked the woman who was kind of, I think she had a British accent. I can't remember a lot of
Fran
names.
Bagnall, yeah, she's really brilliant.
Yeah, and I really liked Lawrence Krauss because he was so different to the rest of them. He's very outgoing, and he's very animated, and he's very sure and certain of his opinions on the cosmos and the universe, and he does have a cynical element to him, but he says a lot of truths as well, I think, and he kind of brings you into it a lot.
Yeah, and his role in the film, because obviously he wasn't intimately involved with the Voyager mission. He was brought in as a kind of a disruptor.
Definitely.
That he would kind of come in and really be given a moment to say, "Oh, space is huge. You have no idea how huge it is. It's this, it's that, and it makes no sense to us." And just basically riff on these big spacey ideas, and then we'd gotta go and back to the story, and he really works at that level. And one of my favorite lines in the film is a line where he says, people say to me, what's the study of space for? Like, what's and he says, you never ask what a Picasso painting is for, or a Mozart symphony, but why does science have to have a function, to be for something, to make technology, whatever? He said the most amazing thing about science is the ideas. That's the principle of the film. Science is amazing, science rocks. Science will save the world.
Yeah, he was kind of a tonic, because he really does, no pun intended, bring you back down to earth a little bit. Yeah, because it's so easy, I think, when you're watching it, to kind of sit there and you almost get to this point where your head's going to explode with all the information on the science, and then he's kind of like this. He just sort of says, "Well, look,
come over
this
here,
is what it
let's,
is." And he's a great personality to him as well.
And he does, as you say, he's like a reset button. He brings you back to it, and then we can go out again. Now we're going to go to Neptune.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I actually have a quick fire round for you. So now we're going to change things up a bit. So there's only a few,
great,
and controversial, some might say. One of them is, anyway. I'm not sure how you feel anyway.
Okay.
So these are all kind of, some of them are based on space, some of them are based on the farthest. So we'll see. So Jupiter or Saturn?
Saturn.
Neptune or Uranus?
Uranus, actually, because I feel so sorry for Uranus. Everyone's all, it was a bit blah, it was a bit like non-photogenic. And my friend Carl McDermott, who's a brilliant comedian, he kept saying to me, after all these generations being saddled with a name like Uranus, now it's now it's the unremarkable planet, the undazzling planet.
Yeah.
So I feel sorry for Uranus. So
they're all quite polite. They say Uranus.
The Americans say Uranus. Yeah,
which I thought was,
which is probably the right way to go.
I thought what was lovely is one of the scientists says that one of them says it's not photogenic, and the other says it's hiding secrets, which I liked.
Exactly. And it's such a beautiful planet. It's really delicate, and the colour and everything. I just love it.
Chuck Berry or Mozart?
Oh, Mozart, really, weirdly, but I'm probably not supposed to say that. That's not the controversial question?
No. Voyager 1 or Voyager 2?
Voyager 1.
Buzz Aldrin or Neil Armstrong?
Buzz Aldrin.
Life on Mars or interstellar space travel?
Interstellar space travel.
This is the controversial one. Yes or no, is Pluto a real planet?
I'm going with Pluto as a real planet.
And
I don't think they should be allowed to redefine a planet. Once we've agreed it's a planet, let's just stick with that.
I think it's a planet.
Totally.
Would you travel to space?
I would. And in fact, I got into trouble with my family one Christmas about 2 or 3 years ago, and I basically admitted over Christmas dinner that I would go on the one-way trip to Mars, and they weren't very happy. They were not impressed.
Thanks a lot. And lastly, what would your message be on the Golden Record?
Oh, I might say I have kind of 2 messages.
Okay.
On good days, I'd probably say, please come here and help us figure out what to do with overpopulation and pollution and all the way we're wrecking the planet. On bad days, I'd probably say, don't come here where we can't be trusted. We'll probably find your planet and wreck it too.
Emer Reynolds, it's been an absolute pleasure. Everybody, I mean this when I say everybody should go and see The Farthest. Thank you very much.
Thank you.